All right, so my wife informed me that one of our chairs broke, so I took it out to the garage to take a look at it, and yeah, she's pretty shot. So I'm gonna see if I can put it back together. So this was the first time I've ever taken apart upholstery, and I know it's not to upholsterer's standards, so if my friend Bob is watching, I am so sorry, Bobby. But needless to say, the redneck repair, as I call it, went over pretty well. It's still holding to this day, so I'm happy with it. So you may have been asking, why did I call it a redneck repair? Here's why. I didn't have any fiberboard repair, any glue, or anything like that. What I did have was some leftover, really thin birch plywood. So there we go. So one thing I learned while I was taking this chair apart was that some of those screws I'd taken out, I didn't need to even touch. Those were for the side brackets holding the frame together. Again, I've never done this before, so live and learn. But I did get the base put back together, and I filmed this about 2 weeks ago, and the chair is still just fine. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and cut up a shelf for my wife's music room. She decided she wanted a new one, and I've got a whole bunch of spare wood. So let's get cutting. So a little background on the piece of wood I'm cutting right now. It used to be a fold-out ironing board that the original owner of the house had put in way back in 1968. It was a really kind of interesting thing when we bought the house, but I don't really wear suits a whole lot, so we didn't really have a use for it. So I took it down a few months back, and it's been sitting in my garage ever since. And I just thought it was a really nice way of reusing something that was part of the house for 50, 60 years now. The downside is that there's no straight edges on this thing. It all shrinks down into one spot. So not really knowing how to cut this real well, it was a lot of learning on the spot. So I made a couple of mistakes, a couple of miscuts, but that's just operator error. So I can't remember what stain exactly I picked out for this. I remember going to our local hardware store, and my wife and I were both looking at them, and she is way better at picking out colors than I am. And she picked this one out hoping it would match with the shelves that we'd already put up. And sure enough, by the time it dried, it looked like an almost perfect match. It was really nice.
What did he say?
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And there it is, guys, the done project. Now my wife's most precious possession has a pretty sweet home. So we made the shelf out of a reused old ironing board, and I stained it, cut it, and mounted it. Looks pretty nice. All right, we got that shelf all done. So now we're gonna go ahead and start cutting some corner shelves. This will be a very first experience for me. I've never tried to do floating shelves before. So I've got the stuff I think I need. I've got some metal brackets. I've got a bit to cut through the middle of the shelf that the bracket can sit in. And all I'll have to do now is make a template and start cutting. So here goes nothing. Okay, so I've got my template here, pretty good. It's a little off on this corner here, but for a guy who's barely ever used a jigsaw, I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start measuring out on my my 10-foot pine board. Wanted to get cedar, but I can't afford cedar. So pine it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and start drawing up some areas to cut. I'm gonna cut it, stain it, drill it, mount it, it'll be good. Having only used a jig one other time in my life, I was pretty happy. There was a couple of spots on two of the boards that weren't perfectly curved, but nothing that a little sanding and a little recutting couldn't fix. There was one spot that was kind of lumpy in the finished product, but my wife couldn't even see it, and when I pointed it out to her, she still could barely notice. So, all in all, turned out fine. where the fun really started to happen. So the metal brackets I had gotten to act as my floating shelf anchors, they needed a drill bit that was bigger than 5/8, and my wood was just barely bigger than 5/8. No pun intended there. But trying to freehand drill it, I ended up popping through the back of the wood. And later on, I bought a dowel jig to help me with that, and that didn't help at all. I think out of the six drillings I did, 5 out of the 6 I went through the back of it.
Had a little oopsie while I was cutting my shelves, drilling the pilot holes. So stain and finish, not too bad. But then when we flip it over, oops. So, not the greatest. I went and bought this little guide here to help me, and it didn't it didn't help at all. The drill still danced around and popped out the wrong sides. So the options are to fix it or leave it as is. And I talked to my wife, and she said leave it as is. So go ahead and get them mounted, and we'll call this project done. Alright, how about those corner shelves? Let's see how they turned out.
It's okay.
Oh, God. So among the many mistakes I made during this, one is not having any idea of how to properly do floating shelves. I didn't realize that I had to angle my anchors into the wood. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two was trying to do just straight screws into the rock plaster or rock lathe or whatever they call it. It's not regular drywall. Supposedly it's stronger, but I haven't seen that in the rest of the house. But I should have done anchors. That way when I had to take it out, I wouldn't have ripped the wall out. But again, live and learn. So now I got to do my patch job and repaint.
So that wraps it up for the floating shelf attempt. Maybe I'll save that for a straight shelf. It's not going to work for the corner shelves. Let's go ahead and take a look at the finished project. So, not terrible. Not really happy about the holes on the bottom, but my wife wasn't really super worried about it. It's a little scratched up from my failed attempt to mount these, but this will do. So I do have one more shelf project to do for my wife, but first I've got something else I gotta take care of. Oh, what a mess this is. Yep, gonna have to do something about this. Now I've seen some YouTubers have this trick where they snap their fingers and everything's fixed. Let me see how that goes.
Oh God. Oh no. I've turned the lights off. I don't know where I am, but it's dark and I can hear laughter. I guess that's the end of this episode. I'll catch you guys later. Take care.